November 11, 1997. Survivor is Elias Weis. Interviewer is Naomi Rappaport. City, Albany. State, New York. Country, USA. Language, English. My name is Naomi Rappaport, Naomi Rappaport, and today is November 11th, 1997. I am conducting an interview with Mr. Elias Weis in Albany, New York, USA. Good morning, Mr. Weis, and thank you for joining us this morning and sharing your story with us. What is your name, please?
Elias Weis. Elias Weis.
And what was your name when you were born?
Same, Elias.
Do you have any other names?
Elia, in Yiddish.
Mm-hmm. And how do you spell that?
E-L-I.
Mm-hmm.
Or
and any other
something
name?
of that nature. Yeah. Eli in English they call me. Mm-hmm. Eli.
Any nicknames?
No nicknames.
Do you have a Hebrew name?
Eliyahu.
And how do you spell that?
Aleph, Lamed, Yud, and think over it like a stripe over it. Or you can also spell it Aleph, Lamed, Yud, Hey.
And what is your birth date, please?
April 5, 1926.
And how old are you?
71.
And in what city? Where were you born?
I was born in a village called Rakocin, and that was at that time Czechoslovakia.
Could you spell Rakasheen, please?
R-A-K-O-S-I-N. And that's located near Mukachevo.
Thank you. For our record, could you also tell us your parents' names?
My father's name was Shlomo, or in the Czech or Hungarian was Solomon.
And his last name?
Weis, W-E-I-S, the same way. And my mother's name is in Yiddish Esther, and in the Hungarian they call Ethel.
And her maiden name?
Roth.
How do you spell Roth?
R-O-T-H.
Thank you. Where was Rakocin? Where exactly?
Rakocin is 10 kilometers from Mukachevo.
And how large was it?
It was maybe 700-800 residents, and it was considered a good-sized village.
How many Jews lived in Rakocin?
We had 50 families, which was also considered a good-sized congregation for the size of the village.
And what did the people generally do in that village? What were they occupying?
Mostly, or some of them were farmers. I think most of them were farmers. Over there, if you had 5-6 acres, you were a good-sized farmer. Others, there was one family that had a factory that were producing spirits, liquors from potatoes and corn and those type of things. And they usually had a big farm because they were able to supply a lot of food to the factory to produce their spirits. And the only ones that were buying that was the government. Private people were not allowed to buy there.
What did your father?
My father, we had a little farm. We also had a little general grocery and general store. And he was also involved in buying grain and selling, and also cattle, buy a cow, buy a calf and sheep, whatever.
Were you considered a wealthy family, a middle-class family?
Middle class.
Did your mother work?
She was a housekeeper, and she also tended to the store. And my father was away a lot, buying and selling. So she had to take care of the couple cows that we had too, milking and feeding.
What kind of a house did you live in?
We had a one-floor house. It's an old plaster, outside plastered white, and we had a tenant on the side of it too. And of course, they were Jewish. And
How large was the house?
we had a living room, a bedroom, kitchen, and a little side room. We were 4 children home and 5 originally.
And did anybody else live with you? Boarders?
No.
Roomers?
No.
The house, did it have electricity?
At the end, we got electricity. Before we were taken away in 44, about 5-6 years prior to that, electricity came into our area.
And what about water?
Water, we had just well water. We had to go outside and with a pail and bring it in.
And bathrooms inside?
Was the same thing outside.
Was your house independent of the farm, or was it part of the farm?
Yes, we had a garden and back, which might have been to the size of possibly an acre, which was very handy because we were able to raise for our own needs immediately the vegetables and all that. We constantly had plenty of that, and my poor mother took mostly care of that too.
Did she ever have help with the farm?
Yes, she had help mainly in the house. I live-in help with the children, and while she took care of the store or had to do things.
You said you were 5 children. How did you arrange sleeping? Where was kind of furniture?
The 4 of us were sleeping in one bed, 2 next to each other and 2 in the back of the bed. So we were.
And your parents had their own?
They had their own bed. Their bedroom was together with the living room.
And what kind of furniture was in your house?
Was very simple. Table in the living room where the living room was used as eating, and the kitchen was also part of it. And we had another bedroom where children stayed that was separate, and that had a closet that you make a closet, not like today in this country. They build it in the wall. So that was considered nice. Not by today's standards here, but and those standards that we had was considered good.
And how was your house heated?
We had just the cooking stove, which was in the kitchen, and that was constantly going. We had to bring in wood. We chopped wood outside and brought it in. And we used that for cooking as well as heating the front room.
The Kehilla, who was the Rosh Kehilla? Who was the head of the Kehilla?
We had a shochet. He was the head. He was the slaughterer of the chickens and the animals for the slaughterhouse, and he was the head of the Kehilla. He did the davening, he preached, and he carried all these responsibilities.
Do you remember his name?
Kleinbart was his last name. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And did you have a rabbi?
Not in the town. The rabbi was in an adjoining town or village. And that village was called Benedikowitz. Benedikowitz. It's kind of hard to. And he was the rabbi that had all these outlying villages that people went to him.
Was there a shul, a synagogue in
Rakocin?
Rakasheen?
Yes.
How large was it?
It was a nice synagogue. It was well accommodating the 50 families with the children and all, and we had separate where upstairs was for the women. And it was considered a very nice synagogue.
Your family how was your father dressed?
Generally in a suit. Although he didn't have no new suits, I remember till the last day that the Shabbos suit was his Chusn suit, and the suit that he got married in. That was always his Shabbos and Yontif suit. And for every day there was an overcoat or a pair of slacks and a shirt, and that's about it. No necktie.
Why no necktie?
I guess it was very hard to buy. Clothing was very expensive. In order to buy a suit, you practically had to sell a cow, which was so needed for the livelihood, because the cow gave you milk, it gave you cheese, it gave you butter, and you were also maybe selling some of it if the cow was a good cow. So you basically needed two cows because the cow was always having a calf every year, which we needed to. And so while that went on, the cow didn't give no milk. So we needed another cow to supplement that part. So we had two cows.
Your father, what kind of headdress did he wear? What kind of hat did he wear?
He wore, like you would say over here, like a black hat. And that's what he wore every day. For Shabbos he had a different one.
Was your father involved with any of the religious movements?
He was a member of a Hasidic movement that was called the Pinsker Rabbi. He used to go for holidays to be at his table and stay there for a holiday or a Shabbos.
But he wasn't dressed as a chassid?
No.
And your mother?
My mother wore a sheitel. She had a kerchief always on her head. And she looked very nice.
Do you have memories or how Shabbos was celebrated? How you observed Shabbos in your house?
Yeah, we went to shul every day, morning and evening. And of course, for Shabbos, we were all put on our best for Friday night. We all went to shul. Not the women, but the men and the boys. Shabbos was a very happy occasion. They sang in the shul, and we came home, and we were happy. And the best of the meal from the whole week was always on Shabbos. Friday evening was a very nice experience because we sang the Shalom Aleichem, and we had to sing Zemiras between the meals and after the meals. And it was a very close it brought families together, and you really felt, that we lack in this country that closeness. And Shabbos morning, we all rushed and went to shul with the best attire, and coming home, we all opened up the oven that we put away the food before Shabbos to have the cholent, which consisted of soup and meat and beans and kugel, fineries that we all looked really
Who
happy.
would come to you for Shabbos?
If there were people that came in from out of town, we always asked people to come and be with us for Shabbos, even though we didn't have where to sleep. But we made room. Our parents gave up their bed and for a guest, and even though sometimes it wasn't very pleasant because they were travelers and they didn't have sanitary facilities, so sometimes it wasn't so clean, and they had to cook the linen in order to clean them.
How did you cook the linen?
Well, in a big tub. Some of them had lice. You had to quickly clean that up.
And what were medical facilities like in...
We had one doctor in our community, and we were fortunate that our community had a doctor. He was good for that time. Of course, in today's time, it wouldn't be, maybe facilities were not available. The education maybe was not as good as we have it here today. But he was very good. He was a general practitioner, and if it needed operating, he did that too, without anesthesia or anything. I watched him once operating on somebody on the hand, and he made him drink liquor while he was cutting his hand, and it was very painful.
Was the doctor Jewish?
Was he talking Jewish?
No, was your doctor
Jewish,
a Jew?
yes, yes.
And did he treat other people as well, or
Yes,
just Jews?
the whole, in fact, all the communities came to that doctor from all over. If he couldn't go to see them, they had to bring the patients to his office, and with oxen pulling the wagon, because we didn't have no cars.
Did people use other sources of healing in Rakocin?
If it was something that you cut yourself or you had something going on, they used home remedies, certain leaves that grew, put down, and or also even the doctor used to prescribe leeches if he felt that they should draw out the blood. They put down leeches, and I remember I had that when I was a kid. That was drawing the blood out.
What was that called?
I forgot. You know, they blow up and then they fall off when they get filled up with the blood.
Did people use a feldsher there at all?
A what?
A feldsher, a doctor, not a doctor, but a healer.
No, we didn't have that. Of course, they used anybody that could recommend anything, and they tried that. But as I say, we were pretty fortunate that we had this doctor, and that he was Jewish was also helpful.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school in the town. I went to public school, and that was a Czech school. And that Czech school mainly was created for the Jewish children, because the only ones that didn't have public school were the Jewish children. If they didn't go to the Czech school, they would have had to go to the Ukrainian school, which was also so-called a public school, or the Hungarians, and then each one taught in their own languages. The Hungarian taught in the Hungarian language, and the Ukrainian taught in the Ukrainian language, but each one also practiced religious prayers. So as a result, we might be the reason that they didn't send the Jewish children to those schools. So the government, the Czech government, happened to have been very kind to the Jewish people. The president was Thomas Masaryk, that we considered as the father of all of us. He went out of his way to help Jewish people, specifically Jewish people. And we were very, very happy that we had him as president. He was very helpful.
In what language did they teach in the Czech school?
In the Czech language.
And what kind of religious training did they give?
They gave once a week. They brought in a professor from the Mukach to teach us Jewish history, and that he spoke usually in Yiddish, or he was capable of speaking in the Czech language too. And that was for the purpose of teaching us present-day history.
Were there any non-Jewish children in the Czech school?
There were a couple of them that felt excluded from the Hungarian or the Ukrainian because they might have been Seventh-day Adventists, and they were very badly discriminated by those people. So their children usually wanted to be with us.
And the teachers?
The teachers were Czech teachers. They were brought in from the Czech Republic because we were an added entity to the Czech Republic since the First World War. Prior to the First World War, Czechoslovakia did not exist. It was part of the Austrian-Hungary Empire. After the First World War, they annexed that, or the agreement somehow came that our part was given to the Czech Republic, even though there were not many Czech-speaking people, but mostly Ukrainian-speaking people.
Were there any Jewish teachers at all?
Not in the Czech schools, no. They had to be brought in from inside the Czech Republic.
And how did you get along with the non-Jewish kids in the public school?
Very nice, very good. We had no problem.
Yeah.
There were very few of them. And the reason why they were there is because they felt discriminated in the other schools.
Who were your friends when you were growing up? Who did you play with?
All the children. The community was so basically small that we knew all the children of the community. So, and we all went to the same Hebrew school, or the Cheder we called it. So we had an ongoing constant with all the children of the same age. We all knew each other.
Did you have any relationship with the non-Jewish children in the town?
The relationship with the non-Jewish children was somewhat strange. They always called us names, and they always wanted to beat us up.
What kind of names did they call you?
Dirty Jew, stuff like that. So we kept basically associating among our own.
Did your parents associate with any of the
Non-Jewish?
non-Jews?
Yes. Yeah, we were.
Yeah.
Basically, we were very friendly with our neighbors. They were helpful to us, and we were helpful with them. If they needed money, they came to us. If we needed to borrow money, we went to them, and the relationship was very close with the neighbors.
Did you live near each other?
Yes. Yeah. On one side of our house was Ukrainian. The whole side was Ukrainian families, and the other side was some Jewish families.
Did you visit each other's homes?
Yes.
Did you eat in their homes?
No, because they were not kosher.
Did they eat in your homes?
I don't remember them eating, but we exchanged food. We sent them food just as a way of showing friendship. Like, for instance, when Purim came, it was a custom to send shalachmonas. We sent to all the non-Jewish families as well that we were close with or known very well. We sent to them shalachmonas as well.
Did they participate in any of your simchas?
Not usually.
And
not usually.
About you and theirs?
Not usually, no.
What language did you speak at home?
I spoke the Ukrainian and the Hungarian, and then the Czech.
But you and your
Yiddish.
family, your
The
parents?
family spoke, among ourselves we spoke Yiddish.
And with your neighbors?
All Yiddish. The Jewish neighbors we spoke Yiddish with. No other language.
Yet you did not play with their children?
At times, there were times that we did, but not very often. Because they had their friends from their schools, so they were playing among themselves. And of course, we were always happier among our own. But we didn't face no hostility that way.
After the Czech public school, where did you go?
After the Czech public school, towards the end of my school period, Germany came into being and allocated our area to the Hungarians. And the Czechs left, and the Hungarians came in and took over our part of the country. And as a result, there was no more Czech school. And we went to one year I went to the Hungarian school.
Were the children the same and the teachers the same?
No, this was Hungarian teachers.
And the children?
The children were all Hungarian.
And
Because that was, our town was separated. Half of the town was Hungarian and half of the town was Ukrainian. And there was like a separation between them.
how did the Jewish kids get along? How did you get along with the Hungarian kids in school?
Very little to do with each other. We were there and we felt totally strange. And then they became so anti-Semitic because Hitler already dictated, had the Hungarians take over that part of the country, so they already showed their anti-Semitism to a greater degree.
Did you have any personal experiences with anti-Semitism at that point?
I had, with a teacher, I was for a while, went to the Ukrainian school, and I had this teacher, and this teacher used to be at one time a tenant of ours. And I walked by him and I didn't greet him. He stopped me and he started raising heck with me and why I didn't take my cap off and bend down to greet him, good day or good morning it was. And I kept quiet because I know he joined the sort of the Nazis with the Hungarian, even though he was a Ukrainian, but he was even worse than the Hungarians towards the Jews. So he almost beat me up and for not taking my cap off and bowing down to him.
Going to change our tape now. Number 2, interview with Mr. Elias Weis. We were talking about personal experiences with anti-Semitism as a child, as a young man growing up. Did you have any other personal experiences?
We at the time didn't sort of realized that this was anti-Semitism. We were used to it. We were used to that we are Jews, and the rest of them are not Jews. And we didn't plan to leave the area because it was unusually bad or anything. We accepted that it was a way of life.
This was what year, approximately?
44, 45. Not 45, 39 to 44.
Were you aware of what was going on in Europe?
Only from the news we got, traveling from person to person. They heard this and they heard that. Newspapers we didn't have so readily available. In order to buy a newspaper, you had to go to the city, and chances are it was already old over there if you got one. So we relied more on personal people that traveled from place to place to bring the news.
Did you have a
Radios we didn't have.
Did you have any contact with refugees
At what time?
after 1939?
After 1939, there came a time that right after that, the law came under the Hungarian regime already, that the Jewish people who could not produce papers that they belonged from that country would be considered as strangers, and they would ship them out of the country. And there were some people that couldn't produce, even though their families and backgrounds were living there, but they had no papers. They couldn't produce papers that they belonged there.
To which country?
Hungary.
Hungary. In other words, Hungarian citizenship.
Yeah. So they didn't have no papers, and they came and they gathered them up and put them in a wagon, and they took them away to Poland, and there they let them out on the streets of Warsaw or wherever they dropped them. And this happened in every community where people could not produce citizenship. They threw them out with the families and all, with children and everything.
Did you know anyone personally?
Yes, I had a couple families that their children that I was friends with. We went to Cheder together, and they were thrown out. And they were, a couple of them, after 2-3 years, they found their way back. Children, they were little children, came back from Poland, and they told us the stories that they're shooting them on the streets, the Germans and the Polish. And they take them into closed-in trucks, and they close the doors on them and suffocate them with gas from the exhaust coming in, and they take them away that way. And this has been going on. So they brought us these stories, these children. So they went through some hell to survive in the strange world because they were little children, and they were around 10 years old. And then also one family came back, a husband and wife, and they were hiding with they didn't take their children because the children were not home with that when they took them away. So the children remained home and the parents were gone. And these two people came back from Poland. How they came back was just a miracle because they went through these experiences, and they were hiding when they came back because they were strangers now in our country, in Hungary. They considered them as strangers, but eventually the Jewish people made some deal with the police of the town to keep quiet about it, and they eventually were open, walking to shul and all that in the open. And they brought us back these various stories of what was happening in Poland with all these people and the Polish Jews and all that. And came a time when we saw that they're going to round us up. And these two people that mainly could talk to us, this family, told us that this, of course, they cried, that this is the end. Where we're going, there is no way to wait for anything decent that's going to happen to us. They were taken away, first these smaller communities, the Jewish people, and we saw them on the highway with a police guard going to the city and to the brickyard where they put all these people. And from there, as they shipped them away to Auschwitz, we found out. Then we were the last ones because we were the biggest, the largest community. So they left us to the last.
These people who came back in the course of, before you were
Taken away, yeah.
When you heard these stories, was there any attempt to leave in your family? Did you ever talk about leaving?
We talked about, but there was nowhere to run. The only place that you could possibly run is if you could go to the forests, and you were hunted over there too, so that nobody really ran from our area any place.
Did people leave Hungary?
To Hungary.
Did they leave?
Did they leave Hungary? No. At that time you couldn't leave. A Jew had to be recognized. He had to wear the star, the yellow star. He was not allowed to be seen any other way. If he was caught any other way, he would be shot on the spot. The laws were such that it was okay to kill Jews for anybody. And if anybody wanted to kill, they would be heroes, that they're doing the job for the Germans.
What were some of the laws that they enacted?
They took away all the rights of the Jewish people. They had no rights as citizens anymore. They could go and complain to the police, and the police would tell you, we can't do nothing. They didn't bother helping us or anything. If anybody threatened to harm us, we went to police, and it wasn't doing us any good.
Well, other than wearing the yellow star, what else? What other laws were there? What else couldn't you do?
Well, we couldn't really travel from community to community. You took great risks by doing that. I remember walking just to the shoichet to slaughter a chicken, because we had our own chickens in the yard. We were raising chickens and geese and ducks and turkeys. So a German soldier stopped me as I was carrying the chicken, and I had the Star of David on, and I was only 16 or so years old. And he asked me, where do I go with this chicken? So I told him I'm going to the slaughterer to slaughter. So he told me, well, pretty soon we're going to slaughter you like that.
Were you able to maintain food slaughtering, kosher slaughtering in Hungary?
We did, yes.
Who did it?
Well, we had this shoichet in our community, and he provided us with all the kosher shechita, whether it was animals or we kept up.
What about your neighbors, the ones that you were so friendly with before the Hungarians took over?
Which neighbors?
Your Ukrainian, Hungarian neighbors.
They were in one way scared to have anything to do with us, because they would be accused, they feared, that they're friendly with Jews. We used to have, I'll give you an example, we used to have a non-Jewish woman who would come on Shabbos to put on the wood on in the stove, because we were not allowed as the Shabbos to keep the fire going. Otherwise, without the wood in the stove, we would be very cold. Everything would freeze up. Also milk the cow. So we would have this woman come every Sabbath, and we would give her a piece of challah, which was a big thing for them, because mostly the Jewish people had challahs. The non-Jewish people, they had cornbread and rye bread. But challah was a Jewish celebration, and we had that. And there came a time where this woman said she cannot come anymore to us because they'll accuse her that she's friendly with us, and we had problems getting somebody to come to keep the fire going or come and help us to milk the cows on Shabbos.
How did your Kahilla head, your Mr. Kleinbar, how did the Kahilla take this?
Well, the Kahilla was, they talked every morning and night when we got together in shul, and everybody was very worried and very scared of what's going to happen to us. And there was a lot of crying going on, but there's not much, anything we know what to do. They already had taken away the older male children from the Jewish people, and they put them into the forced labor camps.
How old did you have to be for that?
They took them from age 17, 18. So we didn't have that part of the population anymore with us that we would have looked up to, that they are strong and they would have some up-to-date ideas. We didn't have them. So we were weakened already with that, even though that they probably would not have been able to do anything. But still, there was a sense of security that was already taken away from us.
Do you remember when the Germans came in?
The Germans, yes. It was about maybe a year before our liquidation.
Which was when?
Must have been 43, 44.
Do you remember seeing them come in?
Yes, they came in with tanks and trucks, and they parked in front of our house on that street, all along that street. Of course, we were very scared. We saw some of them. I remember youngsters that were among them. I would say 15, 16-year-old ones, and we were so happy and all that, and we were so miserable, of course. We felt that we are not of the human race anymore, that they are feeling freedom or anything. When they came in, some of them went around shooting at chickens that belonged to Jewish people to scare us. And when these things have happened, they ran to hide. And there was really no place to hide. So people would hide in a corner someplace or in a closet someplace. And if they would come and look where did this person run, they would find them in a closet or somewhere. They would shoot him there, that he ran away from them. So the fear was tremendous when you saw a German soldier, or for that matter, even the Hungarian gendarmerie, they called them. The police in the towns or the villages were called gendarmerie. Instead of policemen in the cities, they were called policemen. They were dressed a little different. They had these feathers on their heads. And we were very fearful of them.
They were Hungarian? Or?
They were Hungarian, yes. But they took already at that time, when the Germans came in, the Germans gave them orders as to how to conduct themselves.
What were you doing at that point? How old were you then?
I was about 16 years old.
What were you doing in the village?
we used to have, as I mentioned previously, a general store, a little store. They had taken that away. The Hungarians took that license away and gave it to a Ukrainian to run and carry on with it. So we were really getting poorer and poorer. We had a horse and wagon. At that point, my father still used to run to the city back and forth and would pick up passengers to take them to the city, and from the city to pick up a few pennies that way. The freedom that we had from having a store and making a little profit on that, we lost. The fields we still took care of. So we had that.
You worked in the fields too?
Yes, sure. I worked in the fields since I was a little kid. There was a time there, it was in 1942, I believe, that there was a starvation, that hail knocked everything off from the fields. So to the point where we couldn't get no food. The corn was knocked down, the wheat were knocked down, so that we didn't have with what to go to the mill. And everything was rotten because as that was knocked down, that was rotting away. In fact, we didn't even have enough hay and so forth to give the few animals, the horse and the couple cows that we had. And we had to go and buy it in the city, and not having had enough money for that. And where it came from to the city, it came from deep Hungary. Hungary was always considered at that time as the basket, the food basket of the area. So they had hay and they had food. So the food was rationed to us. So we had rations too, because they gave rations to everybody, and they gave it to us too. But we had trouble even getting food on the rations because we were Jewish. And we had problem getting even hay for the animals. For one thing, we didn't have the money. Another thing, it was difficult to go to the city and buy and bring it home.
When did all of this change?
The great change came, the starvation came about 42 or so, 43, 42. And I used to see people would drop outside, they wouldn't have no food, they pass out on the street. We tried, as Jewish people, to help each other and whatever, but we didn't have. I remember the Sheikhat's wife came with a little baby to ask us for milk for the baby, and we didn't have it. And it was very difficult because milk was the main ingredient that you could give to a baby. We didn't have no baby foods. Baby food was considered at that time, if the child was already bigger, they dunked in bread and coffee, and that was the baby food. Yeah. We didn't know about anything, so every family had babies that died practically. This happened practically in every family. Only the strongest that survived.
Did it happen in your family?
Yes. Yeah. I had a younger brother, and he died as a little baby.
What was his name?
Yitzchak Isaac. And he had pneumonia, I guess. And there's not much he could do. He died. And this went on practically in any family. Every family had somebody lost children.
When did the Germans begin to enforce other laws?
When they came in, they immediately enforced the laws, about a year before we were taken away.
Do you remember the orders for being taken away?
The what?
The orders when you were taken away. When that happened. When that happened.
When they took us away?
Yeah.
They took us away close to Shavuos, between Shavuos and Pesach.
Do you remember what happened?
Yes. First, when the Germans came in, as I mentioned earlier, they were parked in front of our home. They came and asked us for room for the soldiers to sleep in. So, of course, we had all fresh, done over for Pesach, the bedding and everything to make sure there isn't a drop of chametz any place. And they came and we gave them my parents' bedroom, a room where they were sleeping, and they took that. And then the other room where we were sleeping as the children, at that time I was the only one home because I was the youngest. My two brothers were already taken away in the forced labor, and my older one from myself was in the hospital. He had TB and he was in the hospital. So I was the only one home, and we were conducting the Seder while the Germans were in our other room. They didn't bother us at that time, those that were with us. And of course it was a sad conducting of the Seder. That was the last Seder that we had as me and my parents. And it was also very sad. My parents cried all the time for my brother that was away in the hospital, and they didn't see no hope for him. The doctors didn't give us any encouragement. So when they finally took us away, when they rounded us up, I escaped and I went in. I took the horse in the wagon, loaded it up with potatoes, and I ran into the city, so at least I will bring some food to the kitchen that the city organized, the Jewish people in the ghetto organized, and to cook for everybody who didn't have where to eat, could go and eat over there at the
You say the city, which city?
Mukachevo.
What was the order when that you ran away from?
I knew they were coming that morning to round up and take away.
Where were they taking you to?
They were taken away to the brickyard in the city of Mukachevo. And I saw that we were the last ones, and they notified all the non-Jewish children of a certain age to help for the policemen, for the gendarmerie, to round up the Jewish people and put them on wagons and take them to the city.
Did you take anything other than potatoes with you?
No.
Did you hide anything there?
No.
Did your parents hide anything?
They took their personal, whatever they could schlep with them, their bedding. They thought they'll be placed somewhere for safety or what. We all had all different hopes.
Were you there when they left?
No,
Or you were
I left just before they came to pick them up.
Did you help them
morning.
pack their stuff?
There was nothing to pack.
Did your neighbors see you packing or leaving?
Yeah.
How did they behave?
They pretended they didn't see us. They didn't want to even keep eye contact with us.
Was there anyone who was pleasant?
No, they didn't offer any help or anything. They were mainly interested in, once we leave, that they will run, who will be able to get whatever they can from the house and the animals and the furniture and so forth. And they couldn't wait for the Jewish people to leave, and they went to help themselves to everything.
What did you take personally with you other than the potatoes?
Just the clothes that I had on myself. Nothing else. I didn't have anything else.
Take any religious objects?
No.
How, what time of the day did you leave?
In the morning.
Anyone
must have
see
been
you?
8, 9 o'clock.
Anybody see you?
Well, they might have seen me riding away with the horse in the wagon and leaving.
Anyone stop you? Attempt to stop you?
No. They were sort of, I don't know, maybe shocked or what. They didn't bother with us at all.
And where did you get to?
I went to Mukachevo, and there I went into the ghetto.
What did the ghetto look
The
like?
ghetto kept being reduced to less and less streets. They kept crowding us, eliminating streets that were Jews and pushing us closer together.
Was there a wall around the ghetto?
No, but there were police, the city police, watching out.
Was there barbed wire or any enclosure?
No.
Could you come and go freely?
No, you couldn't leave. You were scared to leave out of your allocated place where you were.
Did you receive an allocated place?
The city as a whole were told we have to eliminate this street and that street and crowd tightly into where they told us to.
Where did you stay in the ghetto?
I stayed with a family that I knew there, and I slept there. There was no thinking of that you had to have a bedroom or a bed. You slept wherever you could find room on the floor, you slept.
How many were in that?
I don't remember. It was crowded because whoever knew them came, and everybody's home was open. They all know it's not their home anymore, and it's a matter of whatever we can help each other. This is the time to do it.
Who was in charge of the ghetto?
They had some lead. Are you talking about Jewish leaders?
Yes.
Or Jewish leaders, they had some well-known Jewish people who were in charge. And the Gestapo was mistreating them very badly, was beating them up for the slightest thing. If they didn't look right to them or they didn't give them the right reports, they were beating them and all that. Here are people who volunteered to help, and they were beaten on top of it.
Who were these people? Were they the wealthy, the
They
educated?
were usually educated and wealthy. Yes.
They volunteered, or
They
were
volunteered.
Was there a
help.
Yudnerat in the Mukachevo ghetto?
They created one quickly.
And were these people the Yudnerat, or?
Yes, they became. We never needed it prior to that.
Were they helpful to you?
Personally, no, I never went anywhere for any help because everybody else was just as in a difficult position as I was, and maybe even worse. I was a youngster. I could grab whatever was available as far as food and go to sleep whatever was available.
Did you work in the ghetto?
No, there was nothing to do.
What'd you do with all the potatoes?
I left it for this central kitchen, and they took it, and they cooked it for everybody.
Who supplied food in the...
They had bought this Yudnarad, what you call it. They had bought wherever they could. If the non-Jewish people brought it in from their farms, they bought whatever they could buy. Money was no object anymore because everybody poured out whatever they had, because everybody had the feeling we're not going any place other than the ultimate destination.
I'm going to change our tape again. Number 3, interview with Mr. Elias Weis. We were talking about the ghetto in Mukachevo. Did anybody try to run away from there, escape from there?
Not to my knowledge. It was an impossibility.
Was anybody?
You didn't know where to go. We were surrounded totally by enemies. The population was enemies. I haven't heard of anybody having offered to help. And everybody was scared. Even if they could have offered, they were scared to offer.
Was anyone punished there?
For what?
For anything?
You mean Jewish or non-Jewish?
In the ghetto itself, were
Oh, in the
Jews
ghetto?
ever punished?
Oh yes, yeah. The Gestapo used to come in, and they didn't like how you looked or how they started questioning you, and all of a sudden they start beating you and start making you to do these turnovers and see how much you can take and beat you if you don't continue and all that.
Were you ever beaten?
I was about to be started, and the Gestapo came over when I was already in the brickyard, taken out from the ghetto, came over to ask me. I don't remember what he asked me, but he promised he will be back soon to see me. So I was hiding in hopes that he'll forget, and I think he forgot to come back to see me, to punish me.
Were you ever sick in the ghetto?
No.
Anybody die in the ghetto?
Oh yeah, there were deaths every day, continuously.
From what?
And again, just dying.
How were people buried outside of the ghetto?
In the ghetto, I guess they still permitted them to go to the cemetery. Whether they permitted them to bury them there or just drop them there, I don't know. But they got them out. And of course, once we were taken into the closed cars, cattle cars, was another story.
In the ghetto itself, was there any religious life going on?
Religious life was always done, no matter what it was, because that was a way of life. We knew we had to pray every morning and every evening, and kashrut nobody questioned. This was a way of life. There was not the question with us as being religious.
But did people daven every morning?
Yes.
Did you have your talit?
I didn't take it with me. Where I come from, the boys, until they got married, didn't wear no talit. Only tefillin from age 13 on. And I don't remember whether I had them or whether I practiced that after I left. Of course, once you were taken away into the cars, it was no use.
Was there a minyan every day?
Whatever, yeah. Yes.
How long were you in the Munkach ghetto?
Not very long. I might have been there a couple of weeks until that got liquidated. Maybe not even that.
To get back to the religious part, were you there Shavuos?
Don't remember where Shavuos happened. I think Shavuos we were already on the way to Germany, to the concentration camp. We were there already, I believe.
Were there rabbis?
I'm pretty sure we were already in the concentration.
Were there rabbis in Munkach ghetto?
Oh yes. The rabbi that was the Munkach rabbi, he was considered very high up there as a holy spiritual leader, and they came to him from all over practically the world. He was that well known, the Munkach rabbi. Him, in the last minute, the people of Munkach found a way how to rescue him. And they were able to buy off, I heard, the German officers to provide a plane and take him to either to America came or to Palestine at that time. Was no Israel.
So was there a rabbi in the ghetto?
Well, he had left. He was just left at that time. They pushed him out. So we didn't have an official rabbi. Of course, they were religious people that were rabbis, but we paid very little attention to those because at least I felt, what good did it do? You're learning and all that, and look what's happening to us. We sort of blamed some of the things, subconsciously or what have you.
The brick factory you're talking about, did you know it existed?
Yes.
Did you? How did the orders come to go there?
Oh, they ordered that everybody has to be out on the street. Everybody has to get out of their homes and the rooms and the yards, out on the street and line up to march.
Was that a selektia or an aktia,
No.
or did they call names of
Did
the
they-
people, or did you just?
Oh, just everybody from this area that was only the ghetto and only Jewish people there. We knew that you had to line up on the street and they directed you where to go.
Did you take anything with you?
I didn't take anything. No, I didn't have anything. My brother was thrown out, that was in the hospital. He was brought from the hospital into the rabbi's yard that was not there anymore, the rabbi. And they unloaded all the sick people from the hospitals over there so that they would be taken away with us. So they didn't leave any sick people or anybody behind in the hospitals or any place.
Your brother went with
He
you?
went with me. So we stuck together. He pleaded with me I shouldn't leave him, I shouldn't run away, and I should let him hold on to me so he can run wherever necessary with me. And so we stuck together. We were together in Auschwitz until they sent us to Buchenwald, and we went together there. And there, before sending us away to the next labor camp, they called us out that those that are sick should step out and they will be sent to a hospital. So he stepped out, and it was no use for him to go anyplace. He just couldn't exist anywhere other than in a hospital. So they did put him into some sort of a hospital there. At that time, they were anxious to show, I heard, to the Red Cross that they're healing people, which they had a few sick people in some sort of a makeshift hospital in the barracks. I don't think they had any medical attention or anything, but they called it a hospital. And they had a few sick people there, so they could show to the Red Cross that, you see, we're not killing them, we're curing them, we're helping them. And they had in another barrack, they had all children. So they could show whoever, if they come, from the World Organization, to check what they're doing with the children, they were able to show they had a barrack surrounded with children.
This was in Buchenwald?
In Auschwitz.
In Auschwitz?
Yeah.
Did you see your brother in
No,
in
my
the
brother
hospital?
was not with us.
No
Oh, this
more.
one, yes,
Yeah,
he
yeah.
was with me.
Yeah. What
Yes.
was this brother's name?
Yisroel Martcha, Martin.
And you saw him in the hospital? You could see him?
No.
Now, which,
He
I'm
was
sorry,
taken.
in which camp was he in the hospital?
In
In
Buchenwald.
Buchenwald.
Yes.
Okay, I'd like to just go back a minute when you were taken out of the ghetto. You and your brother went with you.
Yes.
Where did they march you to?
To the brickyard.
And how far was the brickyard from?
It must have been 3-4 miles.
And how did you march?
Lines, lined up lines, 5-6 to a line, and behind a long line of people kept
Did you
going.
march through city streets or country
City
roads?
streets. So
Were
city
people
streets.
watching?
We were so troubled with ourselves that we didn't even look who was watching or not.
How long did it
At
take?
least I don't remember it,
How long did it take to get there?
It was maybe an hour.
And what time of day was it?
It was in the middle of the day.
And what did you find in the brick factory?
Really nothing, just open barracks that they probably were drying bricks. I didn't have no idea how bricks were supposed to be made or anything, and I understood nothing really about it.
What did you do in the brick factory, anything?
Really, we gathered around outside and talked, and everybody was in a very bad mood. In fact, down. You could see that everybody was feeling that death is near.
Had you any knowledge of death camps, concentration camps?
No,
Were the names of Auschwitz and
we had no
Birkenau?
knowledge of it.
No knowledge.
No.
How long were you there?
And where
In the brick factory?
In the brick factory, maybe a week or so. When we got in there, they already had emptied out all from the small communities, the brick factory. They were all gone. And as we arrived there, immediately they started loading day and night on the trains the people from the city that were in the ghetto and were emptied out into the brick factory. So it took maybe, at the most, maybe a week in the brick factory before they emptied out everybody.
What did they where did they tell you you were going?
They didn't tell us anything. And the Gestapos that were riding around outside of the cars didn't tell us where we're going. We couldn't. We tried to ask where we're being taken. No answer.
Who did you associate with then? You were a young man. And you had your brother.
I had my brother. The cattle car was so crowded that you couldn't straighten your leg out. You had to sit locked in one into another in a sitting position. And there were a lot of sick people there that carried on and called. They didn't know what they were saying. And it was very, if you had the feelings for sick people, you could have been very badly affected by it. But we were so troubled with ourselves that the sick people didn't, especially a youngster like me, was not that affected by. We knew it was bad, and we knew they're not going to, I had a feeling they're not going to let them live anyway. And they were talking that they didn't know what they were talking about already, used to say like in the heat talk, and didn't make no sense anymore. A lot of the sick people were in my car.
Were there other youngsters like you?
Some, yeah, there were some. And there was nothing that we said to each other. When we crossed out from the Hungarian border into the Polish border, the train stopped and the Hungarian police came, opened up the doors and announced that everybody that has any jewelry, money, or anything of value, throw into this bag. They brought a bag and everybody should throw in, and all the people threw in. Or if we find anyone having, will be shot on the spot. This is the Hungarian police came up.
Did you have anything with you?
No. So everybody threw in. They thought that they're saving their lives.
Did you know you were in Poland?
I knew that I was in Poland when we arrived in Krakow. The train stopped for a while in Krakow, and it was in the morning, I remember. And I looked out through the crack of the train, and there was a little boy standing there and motioned as we were looking out through the crack, motioned to us where they're taking us, what they're going to do to us. And he showed us that they're going to cut our throats.
A Jewish little boy or a Polish?
No, a Polish boy. He was outside free, watching the trains coming and going, and he made this sign that that's where we're going to be killed.
How long were you on the train?
It must have been at least a day and a night.
And where did you end up?
Went up in Auschwitz.
When did you get to Auschwitz?
We got there, I think it was dark. It was at night. And they opened up the doors, I remember. And the Gestapo came with their police dogs and ordered, quickly out, quick, out. Everything when they ordered us, it was always quick, los, schnell, mach schnell. And the dogs were there barking and ready to jump you if you didn't move quick. They held on to them with a chain. And this is how quickly they emptied out these cars. And after that, we were standing there lined up. We were then ordered to walk, and they separated the sick people, the older people, babies, and to one direction, and the healthy people that they expected to another direction.
Were there other people than the Gestapo there? Did you see others?
No, they were the masters.
But were there
Or they
other
were
people?
couples. They too came. The couples were selected by hard type of prisoners, that they did the will of the Gestapo. They kept order in the barracks, and they kept order when you were driven from place to place. And they didn't hesitate to beat you up and knock the heck out of you, or even kill you.
Were they there when you came
Yes.
on the station? And who else was there?
Just the Gestapo and these couples, yeah. When we arrived in the barracks, when they finally allocated a certain number, so many to this barrack, so many to this barrack.
What was the procedure when you were separated and put into columns? Where did you go?
They directed us where to walk.
Yeah,
the
where
direction to
was
walk.
that?
And that would be to undress and to shave. They had lined up to shave the body all over. And undress and leave everything there. Imagine you couldn't take, if you had anything, you couldn't take it with you, because every possession that you had was dropped there, and you walked further and they gave you their prison uniforms, these thin striped clothes. So there was no way of having anything.
Did you know where you were?
No.
Did anybody say anything?
No.
Anybody tell you where you were?
No.
And where did you go from when you got your uniform?
When they sent us to the barracks.
What
They
barrack?
marched up,
What
marched in Auschwitz.
Yeah, but did it have a number, your barrack?
It probably did have, but I don't remember the number. So as we walked and lined up, this group will go into this. They just counted how many, and this group goes in this barrack. You walked further, this group in that barrack, and that's how you might have known somebody that you wanted to be with, but you were cut off even there, that you didn't have anybody with you.
Did you get a number?
Yes, the number I got was on the clothes. It was sewed down on the jacket. So I was not put on the arm, engraved.
What did the barrack look like?
I remember, I think it was a long barrack, and inside were like cubicles where they had straw mattresses, and that's where you were, one on top of the other. Cubicles, one, I think there were 3 high, and you slept that way. And
how many were you in that barrack? Do you know?
Had to be over 100.
And who was in charge of the barrack?
Inside the barrack was the capo.
Do you remember the capo?
No. They never gave us their name or anything.
Were they?
They were always cruel.
Were they German, Jewish? What
They
was
were
the nationality?
Jewish. They were Jewish, Polish Jewish. Sometimes they would tell you, don't go that way, if you go they'll be killed, and so this way you have a chance maybe to survive. So sometimes they would say that quietly.
Were there people already in the barrack when you got there?
No, we were all new.
Were you all from the same place?
Yes.
Did you know
With
anyone?
that transport.
Did you know anybody?
No. Because I was a stranger. I was in the city from the ghetto, except my brother was with me. Other than that, I knew nobody, because in the city I didn't know anybody.
Did people talk to each other?
Over there, yes. Yeah, we talked to each other. But there isn't much we could tell
What
each
did you
other.
talk about?
None of us knew where we were or where we were going.
What did you talk about?
It's just that we're unaware where we're going, what's going to happen to us. And we were unaware that the family already was killed and destroyed. We were unaware of these things. We couldn't possibly imagine that one human being would do that to another human being. Although they didn't consider us as human beings, but we were not yet so far gone that we wouldn't consider ourselves as human beings.
How did you get along with the Polish Jews?
There were not any amongst us, except the couples. They were hardened. After a while we met some. They were a hardened people. They were survived so long. They were there a long time already. And they were sort of amazed that we permitted ourselves so close to liberation, that we permitted ourselves to be there. They thought that something we should have known more than permit ourselves to be taken away. And they considered us as very naive, that we didn't know what went on and all that.
How long were you in the barracks?
In Auschwitz. Maybe a week to 2 weeks.
And were you ever punished or in there?
No, I was once whipped by Gestapo at the entrance to where it said Leben macht das, or Arbeit macht das Leben frei, or something like that. It said on top. And they were counting us over there. They were not happy how you looked when you were counted. They just came out and gave you a few whips with their whips, you know.
Where did you go from?
We were ordered to take some big rocks from some sort of a place that they had and carry it from one place to another. And some of the people couldn't do it, and they beat them up to no end.
Did you do any other work in Auschwitz?
No.
Where did you go from Auschwitz?
From Auschwitz, they sent us to Buchenwald.
And how were you selected to do that?
Just emptied out the barrack. This barrack and this barrack is going to Buchenwald, and they placed us on the train again, on cattle cars, and they took us to Buchenwald.
Did you know what Buchenwald was?
No, we didn't know where we were going. They never told us anything, what was going to happen, where we're going, what we're going to do, or anything.
How long did that trip take?
That took about a day or so.
Who was in the cattle car with you? Who took care of the cattle car?
Inside the cattle car was closed, so the Gestapo was not inside. They were outside, where the conductors usually stay or whatever, on the outside with the machine guns, in case anybody tries to jump out through the opening of the window, which was blocked up with barbed wire anyway. So they would kill me if you tried to jump out or something.
Did anybody try?
No.
When did you get to Buchenwald? What time of day? What did it look like?
Well, we arrived in sort of like in the middle of the day, and of course, they allocated us to barracks over there, and they kept us over there, no work or anything. Just as was a transient things until they sent us to the next location where we would be sent to work from.
What did Buchenwald look like when you got off the train?
It was similar to Auschwitz in appearance, long barracks.
And who was in charge there?
The Gestapo.
And in the barracks?
In the barracks they had again the capos, the old-time hardened prisoners or whatever you call them.
Were you with the same people in Buchenwald?
Yes, that I was in Auschwitz with, yes.
How did people relate to each other in the barracks?
We were decent towards each other. We were very touchy also. If you took a little bit of my space where to lay down, of course, we were irritated because we had so much space to lay down and go to sleep. And we couldn't afford to let anyone encroach on that. You know, that was the most.
Were there any fights? Did people, physical fights? Or verbal fights?
Occasionally, yes. Verbal and angry fights, yes, they were. You couldn't help that. But there was no such a thing as among us killing or anything.
Did the capo interfere in these?
You didn't dare having a fight in front of him because he would punish everybody.
Did some people have special privileges?
There were people who, I forgot, I had one person that was in my group that was the wealthiest person in my community, who owned the spirit factory. He was with me, and he was way into Buchenwald with me. And he was an outspoken, sort of like a leader. As he was in the village a leader, when under good times, he also made himself a leader. And as long as you were capable to help out in any way, you were given the position, go ahead. If you're capable, you do it. But at the same time, when you undertook those things, you were also punished if anything went wrong. You were beaten up. So he was one of the leaders, but he was a good one. He was kind and be helpful to everybody he could be.
I'm going to change your tape again. Number 4, interview with Mr. Elias Weis. Did people get special privileges for other reasons, for sexual favors or being bribed or anything at all?
No. There was no such a thing as bribing anybody because you couldn't get close to the guards. They were afraid. Even if they wanted to talk to you, they had to look around and see whether any of his friends are seeing or not seeing. They were scared of their own friends. They have anything to do with us.
Yeah.
In a discussion type of way, only ordering us.
Amongst the people in the barracks, was there any sexual relationships?
No. Nobody even thought of those things. They were so down and out that sexuality didn't play no part at all in our lives.
What kept you going?
In the hopes that it can't last long, that we will be liberated. I had great faith in surviving and liberating myself, and hoping that I will get into the arms of my father and mother, that I survived and I'm back with them. Even though in my mind, deep down, I know that they were not around.
Did you pray?
At times, when Yom Kippur came and we had to go to work, that was already when we were in the work camp, we asked the guards not to serve us the coffee in the morning. They only gave us a black water with a slice of bread. That was our breakfast. And lunchtime they gave us, I believe, a soup, watery soup. We asked them not to serve us the morning or lunch, and to wait until we come back from work, and then we will take it. And they obliged.
How did you know it was Yom Kippur?
Somehow we knew. There was always somebody that knew.
Let's go back a little bit.
And we were praying while going to work. And I remember praying, and what I could remember just by heart. We didn't have no books or anything. But,
Let's go back a little bit, because you left Buchenwald.
yes.
How and why? Where did you go?
They transported us out of Buchenwald into this camp where we were allocated to go to work for, into a factory that I could remember seeing a sign, Brabak factory or something like that. Maybe I'm not pronouncing it right or what, but again, they never told us where we were.
How far was it from Buchenwald?
From Buchenwald, it took a good day by the train to take us to the camp, from where we were walking every morning and night to the work. The walk from the camp to the work took about an hour or so, an hour and a half.
And what was the work?
The work was, the people I worked with and all, we were given shovels, and we were told where to dig up for bombs that didn't explode. And we found the bomb, so then we had to call the bomb squad. They would come detonate it and take it out.
And what did the factory make?
We were told, or we heard among ourselves, that they were making from coal, butter, or margarine, or something like that. I don't know how that's possible, but that's what we were told. And I imagine there must have been a factory for guns and stuff like that. There were a lot of people working there, and alarm came in the factory constantly that planes are coming to bomb. So they started blowing the alarm, and they smoked up the whole area. They had smokers set up so that the bombers would not see where they are in the precise area to bomb. So we were ordered to get out of the factory, and outside the factory we were lined up over there standing, while the Gestapos, the guards, were in a bunker. So we were on the outside, so if they come to bomb us, we were all right to be bombed.
Were bombs ever dropped there?
Did they go up there? Yes, constantly.
I mean, did the bombs land there?
Oh, they landed in the factory. Yes. And there come a time that they were bombing all over around the factory. And I remember the Gestapo was running with us through the fields. And they were very nervous because they were not organized to have more Gestapos with us. So they were fearful either we will run away, some of us, or we might gang up against them. We didn't have any of those things in even our mind. We were exactly came back as they were running with us. They were scattered in fear, you know, and none of us ran away. None of us attempted to, because where were you going to run? You were going to be caught. And there were a couple people that ran away somewhere from the work at one time, and they caught up with them a day later, and they brought them back, and they gave them beatings. They had them bent over, 25 whips, and our own doctor had to stay there to revive them and continue with the beatings.
Did you have to watch the beatings?
Yes. We were called out and standing in appel, which was, they called appel the counting, to make sure we were perfectly accounted for. Whether we were dead or alive, they had to be accounted that way.
What were the barracks in Brabak like?
In that camp that belonged to Brabak, they were, these I don't remember, I don't think they were from brick, I think they were wooden barracks. But they had the same cubicles for the similar as we had in Auschwitz and in Buchenwald. Straw sacks laid down for a mattress, and that was it. They never gave us clean laundry or anything. We had
How
the
did
same.
you keep clean?
We were loused up constantly. We used to kill, sit down, and when we had a little free time, and kill the lice. And that's it.
Did you have a kapos there as well?
Oh yes.
And where were they from?
They were. I believe they were also from Poland.
Were you still with the same people all the time?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
How long were you in Brabak?
And the Brabak over there, I was there until winter of, that would be 1944.
44?
44, let's see, no, would that be?
Excuse me.
I'm trying to figure out dates I didn't know over
Yeah,
there,
that's all right.
you know. We were liberated in 45, right? Yeah, at the end or the beginning of 45.
Yeah. Were you aware that the war was
We
the
were
conditions of the
aware,
war?
we sort of made believe that we heard the cannons shooting by putting down our ears to the ground, and we heard some booms, boom, and we said, oh, they must be close, you know, but that was maybe our imagination or what we kept hoping for.
Where did you go from Brabak?
From Brabak, from that camp, they asked who feels sick that may want to go back to Buchenwald, and I volunteered to go back to Buchenwald because I was hoping, for one thing, that I might beat my brother that I left behind, sick. And of course he wasn't around anymore. He had died. I met some friends that know him, that came from the same village, and told me that my brother died. A normal death in this so-called hospital that he was in. So I volunteered to go back there. I pretended I was sick and I want to go back, but the intent, I was told later, was that anybody who reports that he is sick from work, they're going to take him straight to the crematorium and get rid of him. Well, the Russians were coming, I guess, so quick over there. They had more important things to do than the few of us to kill that reported sick. So we continued being in the barracks with the criminals. They were Russian, Ukrainians, and German. All kinds of criminals were there already.
How did you know they were criminals?
I heard them the way they were speaking. I didn't understand their language. And I didn't try to talk with them or anything. then after a while being there, which was again maybe 2-3 weeks, they started emptying out Buchenwald and to run away from there because the Russians were coming closer and closer. So they had an appel, a counting, and we were all with these criminals and the Jewish people that were brought in from the different areas. And at the appel, they announced the Jews should step out on one side and the non-Jews should remain where they were, standing. Well, all the Jewish people stepped out except me. I remained with the non-Jews, and of course I never heard again from any of them having survived.
Did these other people that you refer to as criminals, were they in the same kind of uniform as you?
Yes. Yeah.
Where did you go from there?
From there, as eventually as the Jewish people were already cleared out from the Buchenwald, to my knowledge, I don't know, in other areas of Buchenwald, maybe there might have been some Jews, I don't know. But in my area, there were no Jewish people anymore, so I was with these criminals. And I went one day to get my lunch, the soup. And they surrounded, as we came out, they were surrounding the area as we came out from the soup. And they marched us out again to the train station. And as I say, these were all non-Jews. And we were loaded up. The street, as we were marching, was all lined up with black uniformed Gestapos. They looked very cruel, and they were shooting anyone that stepped aside. And these were now, so they're non-Jews. They could have been German, they could have been Ukrainians, Czechs, they could have been anything. And anyone that stepped out to the side or anywhere, they shot them on the spot. And we kept walking until we got on the train. This was an open car. Didn't have no roof. And this was in the month of April, and it was rainy season, it was snow, raining, and it was all kinds of bad weather. All of this was on us, on the open. And we were in that car maybe 2 or 3 weeks. I don't remember in all this time ever receiving food or drink. They let us off a couple times to straighten out, or anybody had to go to the toilet or just off the train, right there. And while we were traveling, we were again packed in like sardines, one into the other, about 120 to a car. And we had to make room for 2 Gestapos to be among us, because otherwise it would have been easy to jump over and to run away. So every day there were a few dead ones that had to be carried to an empty car and load up with dead cars. They called it the death train. There. And they dumped the bodies constantly every day over there from each car. A lot of us got shot from the Gestapos that were with us. And a lot of times the train was standing for days in the middle of nowhere where the Luftwaffe was on the ground. They were watching out for planes that would come to bomb, they would shoot at. But in the meantime, they were very angry at us, and they just shot through the cars. So if you happened to stand or sit up, you were shot, because they didn't even look where they were shooting. They just shot through at anybody. So by the time we arrived, after all this starvation, and we didn't even know we were hungry or thirsty or anything. We were so skin and bone, hardly could move. Then we arrived there, There were very few. There were 6, 7 or so survivors in each car.
Where did you
And
arrive?
I was one of them.
Where did you arrive?
In Dachau.
Did you know where you were going?
No,
Had you heard of Dachau?
no. But apparently, somewhere we must have been told over there already that we're in Dachau. Or we might have seen a sign, this is Dachau. And when we arrived there, they put us into an open barrack again that had no roof. It was terribly cold and raining, and we were wet and hungry and everything. That the crying there was so terrible, loud by these people. And people were dying there with their mouths open crying. These few that were left over from each train.
You were all kept together.
Together in that big open barrack. Finally came a time in the morning where some of the Gestapos came and they took us to barracks. At that time, for some reason, the Gestapos were not mean. Apparently the Americans were so close to the Dachau that they were not mean anymore. They were not looking to shoot us or kill us or anything. I remember wanting to bend down to drink the water from the ground, that puddle. And they said, don't drink it, you're going to die if you drink it. The Gestapo saying that. It was an unusual word that, you never heard before. So we finally got into barracks. Before they allocated us to the barracks, they took us to a place where they were delousing you. And they took the clothes away. They gave you fresh clothes, fresh prison clothes. They were putting it into like steam bath, the clothes, to kill the lice, It was so hot there, and they also took showers there. And then they led you to your barracks. And they were treating us halfway decent over there already. And then, as after being in the barracks, after a day, the Americans came. They liberated us. A lot of us ran to the yard, to the wire fence, to be happy, to show our happiness with the Americans that came. I didn't go out. I stayed in the barracks. I was too weak to go, so I stayed inside. Later I went out for a walk, and the Americans, of course, brought us food right away. They cooked whatever they had. And, of course, everybody filled themselves up with all they could. And I personally and others of us put away for the next day. We were not sure whether we were going to get food the next day. Of course, that was the real big downfall. We ate that cold beans or whatever it was. And that gave us the runs. That broke through our insides. And we died like flies. And I had the runs too. Somebody told me to eat burnt bread, that will solidify your inside. So I ate that, and eventually I got better. I don't know from what, but eventually. Maybe because I was from a small village and I was used to eat anything and everything. I wasn't pampered ever with food. I knew whatever you could eat was good. And that's how I survived mostly. I was able to eat during the concentration camp, anything that they gave.
Do you remember the first Americans you saw?
I only saw them from the distance.
Did you speak to any of them?
No.
What was it like in the barrack on the day you were liberated?
Everybody was happy. that we finally got liberated and everything is going to be fine. Of course, you started thinking whether any survivors. You were anxious to go home.
Was there a couple there when you were liberated?
After the liberation, that was a friendlier atmosphere. After the liberation from the barrack, I was taken to the hospital in Dachau, which was supervised by the Americans. The doctors were German, the nurses were German, but they treated us fine. They did what they could.
What day were you liberated?
I guess it was the last day of April. That was April the 29th or so, 30 or whatever. It was the last day of April.
Do you know what time or what time of the day?
It was the middle of the day. I remember, because I remember seeing them through the window that the Americans came and German Gestapos were laying dead. Apparently the prisoners were killing some of them that they recognized, that they were mistreating them, and there were some laying dead scattered on the grounds.
How did you connect with your family, reconnect with your family?
When I was finally permitted to go home from Dachau after the hospital stay, I kept bothering him, please let me go home.
How long were you there?
I must have been there, I don't know, 2-3 weeks, maybe longer, I don't know. So I was permitted finally, they put me on a train to go to Czechoslovakia. And as I was traveling on the train, there was no room inside the train. So I traveled on top of the roof of the train. There were people traveling wherever they could hold on to a door handle hanging just to go. And they were traveling. And I found the space on the roof of the train and I lay down there and traveled there. And the train stopped to fill up with water at the water fountain. You know, in those days they had steam trains that they had to fill, so at certain periods they had to fill the tank with water to produce the steam, I guess. So while this happened, I also went down off the train to get a drink of water. And as I came down off the train, looking around for water, I meet a friend from my town, a distant relative, a third, fourth cousin or something. And he says, Eli, where do you come from? So I said, I'm here with this train, I just came in. He says, you know, I have somebody here for you. I have a brother here. He came with him. And he also stopped off from another train for water. And I met my brother there at the water station.
Which brother was this?
David.
And where had he come from?
He came from another camp. I don't recall where he was. And of course we stuck together from there on. And we went way home together.
Home being?
To Rakocin.
To Rakocin.
Right.
Okay. Did the Americans outfit you with clothing? And
they gave us the prison clothes, some German clothes that the Gestapos had. In a sense, that might have been dangerous for us to come into the Russian zone finally with German boots and German clothing. But I guess the Russians were used to see prisoners come with those things, you know, so they didn't bother us. In Czechoslovakia, when we arrived, they treated us good. They gave us food and lodging while we were traveling towards home. The atmosphere in the Czech Republic was decent. When we crossed over to the Ukraine, towards our hometown, where the Czechs were not there anymore, which was allocated now by the Russians to the Ukrainians, the atmosphere felt entirely different. Just by crossing the border, you felt a difference. That freedom is not going to be the same freedom that we saw in Germany or in the Czech Republic. And sure enough, the feeling was not the same, although the Russian soldiers treated us not badly. We volunteered to help them and everything possible. We got along good with them, but still the government itself, we had a fear for them. Although we looked forward to come because they were liberators of us. But the method and the sad look all over was all over to be seen under the Russian occupation.
Where did you first meet up with the Russian?
As we crossed over the border from the Czech Republic to the Ukrainian Republic. Then eventually we arrived in Mukachevo. From there we took a bus that took us to Rakocin.
What did you find in Rakocin?
We found the empty home. The furniture was gone because the cattle were gone, and there was nothing there. The store was operated by a Ukrainian that we had left over there that the Hungarians gave him to. And he kept the store, and we didn't bother him. And I took back the home, and I went to look for our furniture. I found it. And I took back the furniture, brought it back, made people bring it back, so we would have where to sleep and be. And while we were there, we also invited all the remnants that came back home to stay with us, and we will create a kitchen together. The girls will do the cooking, and we will go out to find food.
I'm going to change your tape again.